If your UCAT score still isn't improving, you need to do these 4 steps. First thing to know that the generic advice of just grind through more questions is given by a small group of people where the UCAT comes naturally. Reddit's advice is generic, but you're an individual. You need to know your own individual problems so that you can fix your specific areas. And these 4 steps are going to show you exactly how to do that. So here's what you're going to do. First, we're going to diagnose where you need to focus. And I'm sorry to say that means you need to do an official UCAT mock, no matter how uncomfortable it makes you feel. Do that so that we can look at exactly what we need to do. So this is where people's targets are completely wrong. So let's look at an example with verbal reasoning, because once you understand this, you can start getting forensic about where you're going wrong and where you need to improve. So I'll put on screen the conversion tables for how many questions you need to get right to get a certain score, and then also how that score correlates to a certain decile based on last year's score. And very quickly, here's how the UCAT scoring works. There are 5 different papers called forms, and each form is allocated randomly to a different student. So when you're sitting it, the person next to you might be sitting at a completely different one. And every question in a section is given a difficulty score. And then that whole thing is calibrated based on the difficulty of those particular questions and allocated on a scale of 300 to 900 to give you that section score. So in a more difficult exam, fewer questions are needed to be got right to actually achieve the same score as somebody who's got a paper with easier questions. So the conversion tables that you see online, including this one, are averages across those forms, which means that they're estimates, but they're still close enough to do what I'm about to show you to improve your score. So we'll start with verbal reasoning. I'll get a table up now to show you what I mean. So I want to show you here that by being smart about how many questions you attempt, you can drastically improve your performance. So if we take the top here, which is perfection, i.e. answering all 44 questions correct in the verbal reasoning, it gives you only 30 seconds per question. But if we look down to the 90th percentile, so being in the top 10%, you actually only need to answer 2/3 correct, which means that you can have 50% more time to answer those questions. So that changes the game really, because if you think about it, instead of focusing on all 11 question sets, if you're only focusing on getting 7 right, it's much easier to pick up all the marks for that. Not to mention that of those 4 remaining question sets out of the 11 that you didn't attempt, of course, you're going to have a guess and quickly just go through and guess maybe A for all of them. Now, if you do that, that is 4 question sets, 4 questions per set. So that's 16 questions. On average, you're going to get at least 1/3 to 1/4 right. So that means you're going to probably pick up an extra 4 marks on average on top of those marks that you've almost guaranteed by taking a bit of extra time to focus on. So I'll also show you some similar numbers for how you can be strategic about the decision making and the quantitative reasoning. But this is now where we level up our game. We're moving away from just techniques and how we answer the questions to having a game plan and being strategic. So next, I'm going to show you how we distinguish what type of questions we're getting wrong and which ones we should focus on. But if you want to see the full UCAT method and how it can help you score in the top 5%, check out the Future website where we explain the entire method and we give you some free resources to help you get there as well. So step 2 is having a really comprehensive mistake log. This is now, like I said, we need to get forensic about where you need to improve. But this is the thing that nobody does and why your score isn't improving, but it's the engine for improvement. The score gain isn't in the questions, it's in the review. So take that mock that you did, and I'm sure you did it because this is where we're going to get practical now. And we're going to analyze it in depth by asking the following questions. So firstly, where exactly is the loss? Is it speed? Is it accuracy? Or is it specific question types when they come up? Is it a technique gap, a section imbalance, or is it just mental fatigue from doing the exam? Is it a recurrent error? One-off errors happen, but the same error 3 times is a pattern, and the patterns are where the mark can be gained. And then the final question you need to ask, what is the single highest leverage change that I need for next time? So pick one specific thing that you're going to incorporate going forward now. So every time you do that, you add one more thing, you just get stronger and stronger. So now that we've looked at the specific things, let's look at some tactical things that almost everyone can improve on at any stage to improve their speed. So firstly, drop the calculator when you can. Sometimes you do need to use it, but a lot less frequently than you think. And if you do have to use the calculator, make sure you're really hot on the shortcuts. Next, flag and skip ruthlessly. At the first sign of a really long verbal reasoning passage that's going to be a sink of time or a multi-step quantitative reasoning question, just flag, move on, and then come back to it. But make sure you guess before you flag so that you'll pick up the marks. Like I say, 1 out of 4 times if it's a guess, if you're guessing the same thing every time. And again, just to reiterate, learn those keyboard shortcuts. Alt-N for next question, Alt-F for flag, Alt-V for review, the number keys to answer. This saves about 8 seconds per question, which adds up to around 5 minutes over the course of the whole exam. The final step is probably the most important, which is you need to develop the kind of mentality that is of the kind of person that's going to score highly. That means that understanding that UCAT progress isn't linear, it will be a stepwise improvement. So when you hit a threshold, it's having that knowledge that you need to just persevere and it will come. It's not a sign to give up. Also, if a exam is repeatable, it's learnable. So that means that you can understand how to do it and recognize those patterns. The quickest way to accelerate through that learning process is the UCAT method, which you can check out on the Future website for details of how to accelerate your learning to go as quickly as possible to get the highest score. So you can check that out on the Future website. Otherwise, I hope you found this useful and best of luck with your UCAT.